First up, America's seemingly endless war rages on, but things have quieted down a bit in recent months thanks to the surge. And the surge was something John McCain was pushing long before George Bush ordered it. Despite some strong opposition from all sides, McCain stuck to his guns.
I would rather lose a campaign than a war.
The surge's success has been a point of honor for McCain.
The new strategy, which I know is succeeding, I don't think I know because the facts on the ground show that this new strategy called the surge is succeeding.
But most Americans are still opposed. In a recent NBC poll, 54% said victory in Iraq is no longer possible. And Barack Obama is using that sentiment to his advantage, even while acknowledging recent improvements in Iraq.
I think it is indisputable that we've seen violence reduced in Iraq. And that's a credit to our brave men and women in uniform. But this is a tactical victory imposed upon a huge strategic blunder.
David, how can Barack Obama continue to be the major war critic in this general election campaign and acknowledge some calming of the violence over there?
I think the straddling that's going on right there is a recognition that Obama's trying to reach voters who have already rendered a judgment on the war, that it has failed, that it was a strategic failure. Yes, the violence may be down, but he wants to focus on the cost of staying there. Is it a kind of muddle? Is that what we're there for? A kind of political, strategic security muddle in Iraq? And is that what Americans want to pay for in lives? $10 billion a month, a protracted commitment there that may stir up additional terrorist elements in that part of the world against the United States. That's what he's counting on, that voters have essentially moved on, because McCain is relying on people really filleting this debate up and saying, yes, but he was for the war, but he was for more troops, and he would have gone about it different tactically. That's asking a lot of voters.
So it's the big question of whether it was right to go and whether it's right to stay a long time.
He wants to fight George Bush. He wants to argue the brief about whether we should have gone in the first place. A lot of Americans, because they're disconnected from the war, have already rendered a judgment.
So he's still arguing the mindset, the big picture question of our fight in that theater of the world. Now, can McCain turn it around and say, no, my differences with Bush are strong enough to merit giving me a shot for 4 years?
Well, McCain is making the case, of course, that he would not have mismanaged the war the way George Bush mismanaged the war. And that's going to be his case to make to the American people, that he's more competent.
Good war, wrong strategy. Can he win that argument?
Wrong strategy. Well,
good war?
It depends.
Can he win it? It's a good war.
The American public has made up its mind on this war. The surge is working, yet that hasn't moved public opinion, which I think is really interesting.
That doesn't explain why when you ask people who do you support, who do you trust on the war, John McCain has a slight advantage over Barack Obama. And I think that's because they have exactly made the distinction David talked about. They were against the idea that we should have gone in. They think it was a mistake. Going forward, they have a very different view. They don't want to stay there forever, but they don't want to get out too soon. And I think what they sense about Obama is that what he says sometimes, which is getting out within 16 months, he's just not going to do that. And I think they understand.
I mean, isn't it almost as well more of a gut reaction than having a clear policy? Do voters think, well, I'm not sure if we should get out in 18 months, or maybe we should get out in 5 years, or it depends on Iran? I think it's almost that people look at John McCain and they see war hero and they see an older man and they assume that he has more experience. And there is a concern amongst the Obama campaign that even if the war is going badly in Iraq, if it's on the front pages of the papers come November, then people will think John McCain is more solid, that he has more experience, and we feel safer.
So you believe
that
the prevalence of the war in our faces, that the fact of casualties or whatever puts it on the front page or on the nightly news, is good for whom?
I think it could be, curiously, good for John McCain because people feel safer.
Making a noisy war a horrible war. All wars are horrible. But the noise level's good for McCain.
No, I don't agree with that, and here's why. I think that there has been a feeling among a lot of Americans that a knee-jerk reaction to get out and get out immediately is the wrong decision. As long as it's not as prevalent a story about violence surging, if there can be some calm, then Americans are willing to settle into what David talked about, which is, okay, who's going to manage this exactly right? We know McCain is going to be more prudent about it. Doesn't, you know, there are some who believe he wants to be there for a long time. When Obama says we have to be as careful getting out as we were careless getting in, that's the line. That's a signal that says he's not yanking them out right away.
And he also has to acknowledge the success of the surge, because if you're running against McCain, who you want to portray as a third term, You're saying Bush was a president who never admitted failure. He has to be someone who admits success and faces the reality of what's going on in
David wrote
Iraq.
about that. He has not really done that yet.
He's got to start. He has got to
So
start.
let me ask a